What was the economic impact of Portuguese trade on Africa? If you're curious about how Portuguese trade affected Africa, let's take a journey through history to understand the significant economic changes that occurred. The Portuguese expansion into Africa, which began in the 15th century, was driven by a desire to access gold-producing areas in West Africa. This quest led to the establishment of trading stations and forts along the West African coast, such as those at Cape Blanco, Sierra Leone, and Elmina. These forts protected Portuguese trading interests from rival European traders and helped divert the gold and slave trade away from the traditional trans-Saharan routes. One of the immediate economic impacts was the introduction of new agricultural products from South America, including maize, sugarcane, and tobacco. In the 19th century, coffee plantations were introduced to Angola, which today is one of the country's major exports. This introduction of new crops changed the agricultural landscape and economy of the regions. The Portuguese also introduced guns to the region, which significantly altered the nature of warfare. This gave their allies an upper hand over other kingdoms, leading to a constant state of war and a massive supply of slaves. The result was that millions of young people, mainly men, were forced to leave Africa and work as slaves in the Americas. The slave trade itself had a devastating economic impact. Over 175,000 slaves were taken to Europe and the Americas during the period from 1415 to 1600. This not only depleted the workforce in Africa, but also disrupted local economies and societies. The Portuguese encouraged wars between rival kingdoms to maintain a steady supply of slaves, further destabilizing the region. In terms of trade, the Portuguese replaced Arab control over the trade in ivory, gold, and slaves with their own. They traded up the Zambezi River and interfered with existing inland African trade, benefiting only those kingdoms that cooperated with them. This disruption of traditional trade networks had long-lasting effects on the local economies. The Portuguese presence also led to the establishment of colonies on Atlantic African islands, such as Cape Verde, São Tomé, and Príncipe. These islands served as collection points for captives and commodities to be shipped to Iberia and the Americas, further integrating these regions into the global trade network dominated by the Portuguese. In East Africa, the Portuguese destroyed Arab trade routes in the Indian Ocean, taking control of the trade in ivory, gold, and slaves. This shift in control had significant economic implications, as it redirected trade flows and altered the balance of power in the region. Today, the legacy of Portuguese trade can still be seen in the languages spoken in these regions. Portuguese is spoken in urban areas of Angola and Mozambique, although indigenous languages have survived among rural populations. Additionally, the Christianization of these areas, mainly through Catholic missionary activities, has left a lasting cultural and economic impact. In summary, the economic impact of Portuguese trade on Africa was profound, involving the diversion of traditional trade routes, the introduction of new crops and technologies, the devastating effects of the slave trade, and the establishment of colonies that served as hubs for global commerce. These changes reshaped the economic and social fabric of the regions involved.